Although drops on Veve are more and more unlikely for you to get them, someone has to win. Meaning there's going to come a point where you're going to get lucky and you might not know exactly what to do when you get the drop. So in this video, we're going to be talking about your market strategy if you actually manage to pick up a drop, what you should be paying attention to in the marketplace, and how to make the most profit if you do plan to sell or hold for the long run. So let's get started. Come in everyone, my name is Andy and I appreciate you taking some time out of your day to come and watch this video on the channel. Just before we get going, if you are enjoying the content and you want to support me, you can hit that subscribe button, and if you want to support me even further, you can join the membership down below. I know now the drops are increasingly difficult to get. There's a lot more people on the app, and there's not as many more additions being added for the same amount who are coming on. So your chances of getting the drop are pretty slim. And that means that more often or not, you're going to have to get your deals on the secondary market, just hit and hope that you get the drop for one time. That certainly doesn't mean that you should give up on going for the drops or just not do them, because some of the drops that I've been able to get have been life-changing to say the least. They've helped my portfolio grow to what it is today, and they've also helped me become more knowledgeable as a creator in this Veve space, as I now understand how the markets maybe move a little bit more when it comes to different types of drops, what people are after, and maybe why things happen in certain ways. Because there's so many new people on this app, you might not really understand what to pay attention to and why, and maybe what you should do after the drops if you're looking for certain results for when you actually manage to pick up one. Because at one time or not, it's going to happen. The time that you actually get to the point where you're getting that drop, then you might actually not have a clue what to do with it or what the best decision moving forward is. The feeling of getting a drop as well, especially right now, is exhilarating. You know, having the opportunity to go in for a drop against everyone else and that box coming up that you've actually won is just a feeling you can't really get many other places in the NFT space. Yes, it's nice to mint something on OpenSea, but getting it on Veve and seeing that pop up is just some feeling that you don't really get elsewhere. There's two different types of drops that I'm going to be talking about today, and one of them is going to be the ones that are really sought after, and the other is going to be the ones that are not so sought after. This is going to give you a better basis of maybe what to look out for when you're actually getting something. If you do manage to pick up, then what to think about that and how to actually move forward with it, and a little bit more. We'll go into detail for both of them, and we'll start with the more sought after ones first. What I'm going to discuss today is the Walt Disney partner statue. I understand this is quite a big one in regards to what I'm talking about, but it gives a real good insight to what you should really be paying attention to when it comes to Grails and when it comes to things to actually look out for if you manage to pick them up in the drop. One of the first things that you do need to take into account, especially right now, is edition sizes. Edition size does matter to an extent. It's not the be all and end all, but as of right now, most things that have scarcity are still playing a part in the rise in prices. So if we take the Amazing Spider-Man series that was released for the comic, where it only had 1,000 total editions, it was no wonder that the prices were at that because of the scarcity of it. Now yes, I don't believe that it is actually worth that value, but as of right now, because we still have quite scarce drops just in general, that scarcity did play a part in it. So first, you have to look at the edition sizes of things. That can play quite a role, especially in the beginning if you're planning to sell off and actually understanding what prices could be when you do so. So if something has 100,000 editions compared to something with 1,000, the 1,000 is more likely to have the upper hand in the short term, but that could change over the long run. The second thing we've got to take into consideration is popularity as a whole. This is when we take into account some other things that are being released. So for example, in the DC release season 1, where Hodl was the ultra rare, she still isn't that popular because as a character as a whole, she doesn't have the biggest following behind her. She hasn't something like Wonder Woman, and she hasn't something like Batman or Superman. She is Hodl, someone we've not really had or seen in the movies or in recent times. Now that doesn't mean that maybe in the comic books this is different, but as of right now, the popularity for her just doesn't really match up to others, meaning the price that you're going to get for her maybe isn't going to align with the rarity type that it is. I want you to also note that rarity type doesn't always determine what is going to be the most expensive. In that series, Wonder Woman trumps all of them by far because she's not only a popular character, but this was her first appearance. That's what leads me on to the next point, being the type of drop that it actually is. Walt Disney's partner statue was an FA, which is the first appearance of Walt Disney and Mickey Mouse themselves. Also got things like Supergirl, who was the rare in the DC second series of the cover girls, and that wasn't her first appearance. Therefore, the cost of her is significantly lower than her actual first appearance. This is why taking advantage of all the information that you have out there will play a part in what's the best decision for you moving forward when it comes to something like that. Another thing that maybe goes a little bit under the radar is what the community is actually saying about it. Right now, the Twitter community is pretty thriving when it comes to Veve, and same as YouTube, there's a lot more content creators coming onto this space now, meaning they have influence on what you look at and the decisions that you make. Whether you like to think they do or not, they often help you look in a certain direction. So if everyone is talking and making videos about this said collectible, more likely they're going to have a higher price than they would if no one talked about them. It's not to say some drops are worse than others, but in reality it's just the case. The more people talk about something, the more eyes are on them, the more people are going to pay attention to them. So if something that you're going to be going for and actually manage to pick up is something that everyone has been talking about, then you may just be in for a great run up in your collectible. There's a few other things that you can take into consideration when it comes to Grails themselves. All drops, what you should be paying attention to. You should be looking at edition sizes, the rarity that you're getting or going for. You've also got things like popularity, as well as information in the background behind what you're actually picking up and why. These can all play a factor in the price that you're going to be getting on the secondary market and whether or not you should actually sell or hold what you're doing. Now let's have a look at the market of Walt Disney himself and maybe some of the best decisions that you could have made in the beginning or long term, whether you planned to hold or sell it. And we're going to look at this in comparison to maybe something that you pick up in the future that is classed as a grail. Now, Walt in the beginning started off pretty low compared to what he is now. But take that all out of the equation. We're not thinking about what Walt's price is right now, because in that time and when you actually get the drop, you don't have the data 3 and 4 months down the line. So you have to give your best guess on what you're aiming for and why. Walt Disney was the last drop in the Disney Golden Moments series. And all of the Disney Golden Moments at that time were sitting around maybe 200 and 500 when it came to the prices of what they were costing. Now, once Walt had finished, everyone knew Disney Golden Moments was over. Walt was the last drop. People were saving their gems, waiting for this drop to be over, so they potentially got it in the drop, or are then looking for it in the secondary market. Now, when Walt was released, Walt started around 3,000, exactly at the point when he was open onto the market. Now, he did shoot down to maybe about 1,800 and then started to quickly rise after that and didn't really have a lot of time to stop from there. Now, I managed to pick up Walt at about 2,100 gems, and this was maybe about 30 minutes after the drop had happened. But after that point, Walt started to climb and didn't actually see himself falling after that. And the same with the other Disney Golden Moments, this was the same. In 3 or 4 days, Elsa had 3 or 4x'd, and most of the Disney NFTs actually did the same. So what can we take from this small amount of data that we're gathering right here? Well, what often happens when a drop is coming onto the market is you get the instant flippers, the people who are solely looking for profit, and this is where you're going to either get the best deal or make the most money if you're quick. Now, all the additions don't get delivered in an instant, and sometimes you have to wait a little bit longer. But if you happen to be one of the lucky ones who wants to make the flip right away, then you can sell for the highest possible price that you could get in that small window if you're able to list as soon as the market opens. So if you're someone who is looking to sell, then be sure to try to get it on the market as quickly as you possibly can, because all the other flippers are looking to do the same. They want the most profit in the quickest amount of time. Therefore, all the flippers in the beginning are putting up their prices and undercutting each other for a set period of time. This often happens between about 10 and 15 minutes after the drop, where people are undercutting each other pretty heavily, and you might actually lose out on quite a lot of gems. What we often see after that is a common floor that is sort of found. We see quite a big sell wall at certain points because people have been undercutting each other, and therefore we're starting to find our first foundational level. After that, the foundation tends to get broken because people are wanting to buy into these prices and are okay with doing so. Then the sell walls quickly disappear, which leads to our second sort of common ground floor that we're going to be getting. This is often higher than what we'd seen before, but something that it usually sets at when this is the case. We can actually see this here from the Croc statue that was released yesterday. We saw a 2,200 start price before it made its way down to 1,700, up to 1,800, down to 1,600, and now we're seeing quite a rise back up to the 2,000 region. So at the start we had quite a big sell wall, meaning the price shot down as the flippers sold off. Flippers continued to sell off, and people found the solidified floor at 1,600 before that sell wall started to become smaller as people decided that 1,600 was a good place to buy in. Therefore, the price started to rise up to 2,000, and we're seeing a little bit of a dip right now to 1,900. I'm saying until maybe Minnie's article comes out, this price will probably stay round about this place, then potentially take a dip, as I feel it's really not worth this just as of yet. I'm not saying it won't be in the future, but that's my opinions anyway. If we go back to the partner statue, we can see that as the the flippers started to sell off, because this was so sought after, the prices didn't drop as easily as others would. And what was always seen as a grail before it had even been released. This means that as people are flipping, your best opportunity to buy in is in the beginning. But your actual worst opportunity for Walt himself was to sell right away. This is why one of the things you really have to take note of when you're planning on selling something that you get in a drop, especially if it's classified as a grail, is maybe not the right option. Holding seems to be the right option for most of these. As Veve is still growing exponentially more than they ever thought they would, we have more users coming in each day, and since the migration is now starting to happen and Veve are moving forward with their plans of action for this year, more people are taking Veve more seriously. Therefore, the grails are going to be what are going to stand the test of time when maybe other things won't. Over time, we quickly saw Walt rise to 6 and 7k, even though it's took some dips here and there down to about 7k or so, steadily rose all the way up to about 38k, which is what it's sitting at right about now. Because if we zoom out, we can see that the long-term hold was always the best play for this, and something that people are really wanting to get and keep. It's not to say that ones that are not as sought after aren't good for the longer term hold. They definitely won't take the same significant jumps that something like Walt will take. And this is why I'm saying, if you do happen to get something on a drop that I believe is going to be classified as a grail, it might be best for you to just hold off, relax a little bit, and take the time to truly understand the piece that you're collecting and maybe why it's best to hold. For example, if we get the first appearance of Wolverine, if we get the first appearance of Captain Marvel, the first appearance of Hulk, these are things that people have communities behind. People really treasure and actually want. So for me, in the beginning, they might take quite a dip and people will sell them off because there's always going to be flippers. But over the long run, you're more likely to make the better ROI for something like that rather than something that is not as sought after. You can often tell where a grail might come into place because of how much people talk about them, how much people want them. We've already just got the announcement that Minnie Mouse is going to be coming. People are already going mental over it, and we've not even got a Medium article yet. I know for a fact this will be something people will be desperate to get and really wanting to keep and hold for a long time in their vault. And as the quick flippers get out, the long-term holders buy in, and therefore the price actually solidifies higher than you may believe. Let's then look at something that is not classed as a grail, and it probably will never be classed as one. But to understand more about maybe when the best time for you to sell is and take your profits to then move on to something else. Or if the things that are maybe not as sought after are still good holds for the long run, if you're okay with playing that and don't need the liquidity at the time. We have a look here at something like Lilypad, the rare Mermicorno Season 2. It's not something that people are desperate for. It's still a good set in general. Tokidoki is quite a popular company, but it's not something that aligns with something like Walt Disney's partner statue. Once the listings had sorted themselves, as I'm not actually going to count that, I saw that it started at around 40 gems or so. Quickly dipped to about 35 and didn't really change much in prices, dipping between about 30 and 50 for quite a while. Now yes, it's taken a rise up to about 44 at one point. We saw highs of maybe about 82, and now we're back down to 68. And this is about a month's worth of data that we have here so far since she's been out. It's not to say that they aren't good to hold and they shouldn't be something you should hold, because over time what we often see is more people who are actually wanting to collect them buy them and less people who are actually looking to flip them. But my point is here that when you're getting something that's maybe not as much of a grail, you're more likely going to have to wait longer in order to see the same sort of returns you're actually looking for when it comes to something that's bigger. So for something like Lilypad, in a month or so, she has near enough doubled in price or close to doubled in price, but it's maybe not something that you would be willing to wait a month to do so when you could spend that elsewhere. If we also take a look at Hot Girl, which we mentioned before, she started off around 294 and sat actually under that for over a month since she was released. Now again, that's where you have to make the decision, as if something is not really classified as a grail, then am I willing to hold it for X period of time before it makes the money that I'm actually wanting to make? Because in the run up, she did go to 600 gems, which would have been a fantastic place to take out, and is now sitting at 428. Near enough double of what she was sitting at for around about a month or so. But again, you have to make that decision on whether or not you think it's okay to hold for a certain period of time before it rises to a price that you are happy with selling it at. This is why I always talk about setting up your plan and actually understanding what your plan is. When you get things in drops, you need to know what you're going to do with it and why you're going to do that with it. If you sold her off at 241 when she was sort of first released, then you had those gems to then put into something else you maybe have preferred. And if you'd have waited that month and you'd have saw she was up at 600 gems, maybe there was something else that you wanted to buy the month previously was lower, and if you'd have sold her, you would have been able to get it then. But since that run up and everything took the run up, maybe the thing you wanted is now out your price range, because that run up has went even further than what Hotgirl has done. This is why the plan is so important, and why making those decisions is going to help you over the long run actually be more convicted in what you're doing and make the best decision for yourself. There's always going to be flippers in the drops, so there's always going to be that drive down in price quite quickly before it solidifies itself and starts to make its way up to the price that it actually deserves at that period of time, or what people are valuing it at. Understanding that when you get the drop, it's important to know what you want to do with it and why. If it's something you're willing to hold for the long run, great. You're more likely, as of right now, going to make quite a good return on investment if you're willing to hold for a few months. Or if you're someone who wants a little bit of liquidity to use that gems to maybe use the market to your advantage a little bit more, or get into more drops, then that could be the best decision for you. But I'd love for you to let me know down below what your thoughts are for when you get something in the drop. Are you selling it right away always? Are you being more articulate for what you're actually doing? I'd love for you to let me know down below. I know the video on the screen right now will be something you'll love to watch. Have a fantastic day.